Welcome to the Content Matters podcast, where digital content and marketing pros talk shop. Tech may be changing fast, but great content is timeless. Get inside tips, trends, and practical know-how from the top minds in the digital content industry. Sponsored by Ingenix, the uniquely agile content management platform. Welcome back to the Content Matters podcast. Today we talk to Yoav Schwartz. He's the CEO and co-founder of Uberflip. Yoav joined us on the podcast to talk about the technology behind content-driven experiences. There's been a lot of changes in how we create, manage, and deliver content today, and I think it's important that we understand the evolution of the technology behind those changes and why we're on the path that we are today. So we talked about things like the shift in buying power from the CIO to the CMO, particularly obviously for MarTech technology, the growth of the technology in the MarTech space overall, and the opportunities and challenges that's presented. We talked about the differences between a content experience platform, which is what Uberflip is, versus a content management platform, and what are the synergies and overlaps and differences between the two of them. And we also talked, along with probably a few other things, about the opportunities and challenges that come with having a lot of data or not enough data to create really great content-driven experiences. So I hope you enjoy the show. It was a great conversation. So technology buying has changed a lot, and you've written about that. I read the concluding chapter in Randy's book that you wrote that I actually found was very interesting. So we have a new generation of people buying software applications. It's not just the CIO's office anymore. It's kind of shifting to the CMO. And I'm just curious from your perspective, why is this such an important change in how we buy software?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. Good to be here. It's a good question. I mean, I think what's naturally happened in the technology landscape is we've watched marketing as a function shift from the fluffy, let's get our branding beautiful, let's create these awesome messaging. All of it's still very important, but it's only one half of the equation where it used to be the entire equation. Right. Today, you have brand is super important. You want to create, wonderful assets and all that, but ultimately you want to report back on how that's moving the business, something that wasn't always possible in the past. And as that's shifted, it's kind of forced marketers over the years to become a lot more technical, have to be a lot more analytical. And with the sheer amount of different technologies that have become available to them, they've had to adapt to a new world where a lot more, reporting, analytics, revenue-focused things are now something that they can do, but it's really difficult. So it's not like you can just press a button and magically, all of your marketing campaigns return value. There's a lot of technical work that goes in there, and as such, a lot of the roles of marketers has adapted, and now you really have the brand and demand engines in marketing teams, at least in the B2B side. And that's kind of shifted how technology is bought. And, the CIO or the CTO used to be the gatekeeper for anything technical. And that obviously is what I just described changed. Now you have a lot of people in the organization who are technical. And when it comes to marketing tech, the CMO that has risen in this environment is looking at technologies that are going to help improve their bottom line, help them do their job better. And because they have the insight into technology, they want to be part of the decision-making process. So that's ultimately changing how technology is being bought on the marketing side.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a risk? One of the things that I've kind of started paying attention to is that, obviously you've seen Scott Brinker's marketing technology landscape, and there's not 5 million, but it feels like 5 million different technologies you can buy to help. But it seems like marketers are trying a lot of different technologies, and their stacks are getting really mixed and varied, and that a lot of integration is not necessarily there, either capable to be there or not being done. And that might be part of the reason that might be is because marketing technologists or people that are in marketing picking these technologies aren't really thinking about that bigger picture the way that an IT group might do that?
That's fair. I think that it's been a heyday for the last few years. There's a couple of things that have caused this ridiculous uptick in marketing technologies. One, it's never been easier to launch a technology business. With a credit card,
Yeah.
you can spin up a server on AWS and you can get going. So there's no shortage of new technologies being sprouted. To your point, though, their depth is often questioned. I find that in the MarTech space, point solutions are abundant. There's always a small thing that could be improved, and there's always seems to be a technology that rises to solve that small problem. But I also believe that marketers have now faced tech fatigue. They're kind of tired. It's kind of cool when they can shop and there's all these flavors. But at the end of the day, you just kind of want your basic flavors. Now, with the maturity of that organization, they're starting to think more like the CIO. Right? It was really an upbringing that they had to go through, an adolescent stage of being really deep in technology, and now they're kind of coming out of it and realizing, okay, let's put a little bit more thought towards this. We don't want to have 50 technologies where there's overlap between 30 of them. Let's try to find technologies that that are deeply integrated, that handle more than one thing. Looking towards platforms, deeper tech, and so forth. So the mindset is starting to approach that of a CIO that's kind of had a lot longer to think about this stuff.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they're going to meet somewhere in the middle. Right? That's naturally where they're going to land.
Yeah, it seems like you'll probably see a lot more people that maybe once lived in the IT department shifting over because they have an interest in marketing technology specifically and how it all works together. And they can maybe bring in with them that idea of how does it merge or integrate with the rest of the technology in the company so that you can continue to have or become having, that single view of the customer across the entire life cycle.
Totally. I mean, the bottom line is marketing tech is cool, right?
Yeah.
Where it's really innovative. It's really pushing the envelope on what's possible in terms of, creating more personalized experiences, the type that we've only really known to have human-to-human connections, and try to create that on the web or in an app or whatever it might be, try to do it digitally. That's a lot of really advanced tech. So yeah, there's again, like I said, they're merging because the interests of the marketer and the interests of the CIO are really headed towards the same place.
Right. So let's talk about the customer experience platform. And this is what Uberflip is, right?
Correct.
It's a term that I kind of have. I don't necessarily like it just because not so long ago, the web content management solutions, when they first kind of started shifting what they wanted to be called, they called themselves customer experience platforms. But this is a different thing altogether, right?
Sorry, did you say customer experience platform? We're not a customer experience platform. We're a content experience platform.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So
And
there's
that's a good
the
distinction.
difference.
Yeah, there's a good distinction. And the reality is customer experience is this giant umbrella term. And the companies, I mean, even Salesforce calls itself a customer experience platform, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality is anyone who's doing anything on the web that is touching a customer in one way or another is dealing with the customer experience. So that's everything from marketing to sales to customer success to support software. It's all the customer experience.
Yeah.
We've specifically avoided using that term because it's so broad. It's still really important, and we find ourselves sitting underneath that umbrella. But when describing what a technology does, we're really honed in on how do we create those great customer experiences when it's related to content? How do we create content experiences that are highly personalized so that a buyer, whether they just discovered your brand or whether they're your biggest advocate, is able to find the information that they need and feels like it was served up to them like they would expect when they're at home in bed watching Netflix, right? It's we're all consumers at the end of the day. We all expect this, this amazing, personalized, curated journey for us to consume the information we're interested in. On the consumer side, it's really more for entertainment. On the business side, I have a decision to make. I need to buy a product. I need to buy a service. Serve me up the stuff that I need without me having to, click a million times and and reach a bunch of dead ends. That's what we're trying to serve.
So how does it differentiate then, from your perspective, from what a content management system, a web content management system does?
Web content management systems were the perfect solution when we all discovered the web, right? Like 25 years ago. They were perfect because we had gone from a state of only physical. Like if you wanted to send out your message, you had brochures and flyers and phone calls, really. But if you wanted to replicate that brochure experience, not go to the printers and spend a fortune, the web introduced this way of like, we're going to put this information online. And better yet, when we make a typo, we can change it. And then the next person will see the updated version. Right? That was the revolution of what the internet brought for the business world. And for that, we needed a CMS. We needed a way to manage content. And if you think about all the major CMSs that we know today, whether it's WordPress or Sitecore or Drupal, all those were really invented around that time, within 5 years of the web's infancy, or the web being born. Yeah. And they've really adapted and evolved and become more sophisticated. They haven't sat back whatsoever. But at their root, at their foundation, they're still solving that particular problem. How do we manage a bunch of static pages? Be able to update them, be able to help people host them, edit written content. They were not designed for what digital marketing evolved into in the last 10 years. They simply weren't. So the big differentiation for us is shifting from managing a set of pages that we know how many pages there are, we know our website, all very important stuff. And to be honest, that's not something Uberflip's going to help you with. We're not going to help you build your website. Your website is essentially, that digital brochure. But when it comes to your content and the journeys that you want to create for people to uncover and understand more and more information about your product or service, content's never ending, right? Your marketing team is probably producing content right now. And you're probably not throwing out the stuff you wrote 5-10 years ago because it's still relevant, which means our library grows infinitely larger every year that passes. Right? Managing all that is completely different than managing a set of static pages, and managing the infinite permutations of journeys that you'll have to create now and in the future is just not something that CMS was built for. So that's ultimately how we differentiate between the two.
Right. I mean, and that all makes perfect sense, especially a lot of even today's web content management platforms still kind of work on that page-based model. But there are some, including, I guess, the new headless, anyone that has a headless API manages content, but it's still, I guess, it's not necessarily like white papers and ebooks. That's how you kind of see it different, right? There's digital assets in addition to the straight kind of HTML-based content, or
Sure. I mean, HTML-based content is ultimately blog posts, right? And that's where another drawback of a lot of CMSs is if it's not a blog post, we'll just throw an embed code, and now it's a video page, or now it's a white paper page because we threw an embed code. And that's it gets you halfway there, but it's not really designed from the ground up to be like, this video page is going to behave the way we want people to consume videos. This white paper page is going to be really designed for that use case. So there's definitely an opportunity. Definitely the opportunity there, which is why Uberflip was started. And on the headless side, I think headless is the perfect evolution of the CMS, because if I'm a web developer, or I'm that CIO, and I do need to create these pages, I don't want to be confined to the technology that CMS was built on. I just want the data. I want to display it the way I want to display it, using the servers I want to use, using the scripting language I want to script it. That's the opportunity there. I think now it's become table stakes. So really, providing a consumable API for all of your content is absolutely necessary. It's something that Uberflip has. It's something that a lot of other headless CMS specific vendors obviously offer. But ultimately, is what use case are you trying to solve for?
That makes sense, definitely. A quick pause to say thank you to Ingenix, the Content Matters sponsor. Ingenix is a leading provider of agile content management solutions. You can check them out at ingenix.com. when with the content experience platforms, then do you see any overlap with the CMSs, or is there clear kind of where do they align and where do they overlap?
Yeah, there's tons of overlap in the sense that we're both producing, um, a rich front end experience, right? A
Yeah.
destination that if you're, putting out an email campaign or you're sending out, a social campaign, ultimately people are going to click on a link. Where does that link take you? Well, it's supposed to take you to an experience that mirrors and continues the conversation started on that channel, right?
Yeah.
Now, as a marketer, if you just want to put up a landing page because you sent out a campaign and you don't care who it reaches, you just want them all to come to the same destination. Well, you just need basic landing page software for that because whether you're using something like Unbounce or your CMS, you're able to spin up a page. For the CMS, you probably have to go to your web team to develop it. That's one of the big differences, is that it's really designed for a developer. Where with Uberflip, sure, you might want your developer to get involved in the early days while you're launching it, just to get all the brand assets looking the way you want them, the logo, the colors, all that. But from that point on, it's really designed for the marketer to run their own show. So when you need to spin up a new landing page, well, it's not just with one piece of content. It can have 10 pieces of content in it. And they could all be traversed the way you want those content pieces to be traversed so that they can be consumed in a row rather than every time you send out an email, you get one piece of content. Now you can create journeys. And that's really the big difference is we're enabling the packaging of content and giving the marketers the tools to do that, not having to go to IT or the agency to put all that together for them.
Okay. So do you need technology, I guess, well, if you think about it, there's tons of content, like you said, that a company might create, and some of it could be really old, but it could be very evergreen content. Like how do you figure out, or how does this, a content experience platform figure out what is the best information to surface for a particular journey based on, knowing there's all that information in there?
Sure, great question. So another great differentiator of a CMS and Uberflip is that we come with all the integrations to all your other marketing tech, right? WordPress, for example, does not have a Marketo or Eloqua integration, right? It's not designed for that. So to answer your question, the first thing you want to assess is, do I know my audience, right? If you are targeting an ABM campaign, an account-based marketing campaign at a specific account, let's call it Intel, and and you're targeting them using whatever ad tech you're using to get in front of them, you want to send them to an experience that's designed for them. So it's like, hello, Intel, here's all the content that you would find interesting about our product or service. And that could be a manual thing that you pull your top 6 or 7 assets out of your library of thousands and quickly build that. And that's something you can do in Uberflip in 3 minutes. Now, to go beyond that, you might say, you know what? Intel is a big organization, and I don't know who's going to hit this content, but I know that I have 50 assets that may apply, and I'm going to let machines figure out, of the 50, which ones to surface. And now you can use our recommendation engine that's powered by Bombora's intent data to say, all right, of this 50, on the fly, recommend them the next pieces of content based on who they are. How they've been profiled, all SOC 2 compliant, but ensuring that that person is going to see exactly what's important to them. If they're an IT person, that might mean more technical white papers. If they're from the marketing department, it might be more about how your product or service can help that department. And now you can start to see how that journey starts to be manipulated, even though you as a marketer may have set the umbrella and said, all right, well, these are the 50 assets that I have that are going to be, from any which way I can slice it, what they're going to be interested in. But now I don't have to manually pick it. I can now send experience and let Uberflip's recommendation engine take over. That's one approach. The other approach is to use one of our personalizer apps that now integrates with 6sense and demand base or even query strings to enable to manipulate that selection in real time based on other data sources that you might have available. Again, all these things are either integrations we have in the application, or apps that were built for our marketplace, which is actually launching in a couple of weeks. So that's a big differentiator, because we are purpose built for marketing, for creating, for traversing somebody through that buyer journey.
Can you also use it for sales? Like, I guess, because they kind of need similar type of experiences for customers, right?
Absolutely. So, that's another big thing that's happened in the evolution of marketing. Sales has evolved, and the line between marketing and sales is really starting to get blurry. You really don't know where to draw the line. Of even people that technically sit on the sales team, are they selling or are they marketing, right? That BDR and SDR team, I consider them more marketers than they are salespeople. They're sitting on the sales team because more often than not, they're aspiring to be salespeople, and that's their way in. But the techniques that a marketer will use to attract an audience is identical to that of a salesperson. The only difference is how targeted you can get. As a marketer, using that Intel example, I know I'm sending out to that organization. As a salesperson, I know exactly who I'm talking to. As a salesperson, I have the opportunity now to truly personalize to this one individual or this group of individuals, because I know enough about them so that I can take, of those 50 assets, decide which 5 are most applicable. And that's what our sales extension enables. Uberflip for Sales basically enables a salesperson, while they're in their emailing to Joanne at Intel, to quickly pick out the top 5 assets that are going to apply to Joanne, and actually build a beautiful branded experience, that actually has Intel's logo, has the contents, that has a message for Joanne, and build that on the fly while they're writing the email. So that's the power that we enable, which again is very, very purpose built to closing that gap and creating a really beautiful personalized journey for that buyer.
Yeah, it sounds like it's the right way to go to kind of really hone in on what that person might need to kind of help them move along, with their decision making. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously artificial intelligence plays a big role in how to create the right content experiences. Sixth Sense is AI, and along with all those other ones. But one of the things that I read when you wrote your chapter in Randy's book was just that it works one way today, but that it needs to kind of evolve to work differently in the future. Like, what are you seeing is, what does it do now compared to what it really needs to do?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. I'm trying to remember what I wrote. Was that in relation specifically to the 6 senses of the world?
No, I think you were talking about creating unique, personalized experiences, and that AI plays a big role in how you do that. But that how it works today is not how it's. I mean, it works obviously at some level. I don't have the book in front of me, so I can't read it out. But that it needs to kind of evolve to do even more in the future.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I know where I was headed with that. So, one of the drawbacks of AI today is that it's very behavior based, right? So
Right.
if I want to be able to create an amazing experience for you, more often than not, this actually doesn't apply so much to Uberflip's AI, but more often than not, I can't recommend anything to you until I see you behave in some way, until you start clicking around.
Yeah.
Right. So it's called the cold start problem. I want to create this beautiful personalized experience for you the first time you come, because first impressions are everything. But I actually can't do that because I don't know who you are. I don't know anything about you. So that problem needs to be solved. And one way we've gone about that is using Bombora's intent data, because we may see them for the first time, but Bombora may have followed them around the web and know a little bit about them anonymously, but know a little bit about them. So that first time that they land on an experience, we have some insight into what topics they're interested in. So that's one way that that we can obviously get way better at. Ultimately, what we strive for, what every marketer is going to strive for, is how do we create a human-like experience, right? But digitally and at scale. Because the problem is, if you only get 90% of the way there, the more personalized we get, the more eerie it feels. Like, wow, how do you know all this stuff about me? This is kind of creepy.
Right.
Until we get good enough where it feels natural, right? And the road to feeling natural is a very difficult one with diminishing returns. But that's ultimately the goal, is how do we really create this this beautiful, natural, personalized experience, because everybody wins in that regard. As a marketer, I'm not wasting time or dollars or, on all these campaigns and getting right to the heart of it. And as a buyer, you're just having such an easy time finding what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You're not being sold, you're not being manipulated, you're just finding what you're looking for, so you can make your decision, because ultimately buyers are just making their own decision. If they can make it faster, why not? Everybody wins. So there is a long way for us to go in that regard.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think the big challenge with doing, the intent-based kind of focus is that you have to have a lot of information to really find the right intent, I guess. I'm not saying it quite right, but you have to have a lot of data to work with. Otherwise, it doesn't really help you a great deal.
Yeah, it's actually a funny thing about data. When you have too much of it, it's also bad.
Yeah.
It creates noise. So like the one school of thought is, let's profile let's profile people on as many different touch points as possible, versus the other approach is, let's profile and understand people in very specific, finite places, because then we'll hone in on the context of what they're interested in. Because as people, we might be searching the web to buy our next IT infrastructures, hardware, but we also have kids and we might be shopping for toys, right? So if we get profiled, like it's a mishmash. It's very hard to hone in on what this person is interested in this particular context. So there's, like I said, there's two schools of thought there.
Do you think in the kind of future, maybe not so near, maybe near, that we will evolve? Like, how do you see us evolving with our technology to kind of create those better experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the data needs to get better. One of the things that we realized in the last 6 weeks, now that I don't want to timestamp this conversation, but while we're in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, we realized that with everybody working from home, all the technology vendors who are dependent on reverse IP lookup are in a lot of trouble, right? Because they're trying to identify what company you work for, which normally they're looking at IP addresses related to that company, and it's not working. Right? So on the one hand, it's forcing all those vendors to expedite the improvement of how they figure out who you are, right? Because right now, otherwise their tech won't work. So, that's one way that we need to improve. It's like the quality of the data needs to go up, and until it does, marketers aren't going to trust it, rightfully so. If you're going to send out a campaign to your top 500 accounts, you might let technology take over for the bottom 400, but those top 100, those top 50, you want to make sure that those are right? That's like your creme de la creme. So until we really, really get better with a cleaner and more sophisticated with our data, it's just harder to do some of these things at scale. We're still doing them, but the accuracy has plenty of room to go up. And with that, and with more advanced technologies like what Uberflip is doing, what other vendors are doing, how do we make it easier for the marketer to create these personalized experiences? And the reporting is ultimately what tells us if we did it right or not, right? So going deep on analytics, understanding patterns, understanding the journey in which customers actually traversed, where they hit roadblocks, how can we make that faster? But every step that we take away, that's one less campaign, those less ad dollars that we have to spend. And ultimately, we're making happier customers. So, it's a combination of better data into the system so that we can make decisions on it, and better data out so that we can report on it and understand what's working.
Yep, absolutely. Last question for you.
Sure.
The content experience platform, where do you see that one there's a lot of talk, but there's a lot of companies that still aren't quite buying into the idea of creating content hubs, which the content experience platform helps you do. But that's, I think, because they're thinking of it more, not a personalized version of it, but using it more as just like a place to store all my assets, and people come and look at it. Like, how do you get people to kind of think differently about how to leverage that kind of technology, and how do you see it evolving in the future?
That's a great question. I mean, when we started, it was really about creating that library of content because that was the problem that existed. Marketers had content all over the place. It just
Yeah.
wasn't consolidated. It wasn't easy for them to find. It wasn't even easy for their own staff to find. Salespeople would have to search Google to find their own content.
They
So
still
years
do.
ago, they probably still do. Yeah, I mean, if they're not using Uberflip, that's for sure. So that to me is the catch-all, right? It's the catch-all of we have to start with a clean database of all of our content, like we do with everything else. And that database of your content is really your library or your resource hub or whatever it might be. But that's really just sitting there for somebody to self-discover if they're really up for going on an adventure and searching. You don't search all of Netflix. You want it to be broken down by topics you're interested in. You want machine learning to get in there, but you still need to have that library of content, right? But what Uberflip has evolved to is, as a marketer, how do I take that library of thousands of assets and start chopping it up on a case-by-case basis? So if I'm targeting for a specific campaign, chop up those top 10 assets, put the right calls to action, put the right branding, the right messaging, and ship it without having to go to my IT department, without having to go to my agency. And now I can do that, 20 times in a day, right? It's more about the flexibility of having a platform that enables you on a daily basis, all day long, to slice and dice your content to create those mini aspects of the journey and consistently push people along, right? Whether they're early days and you need to create, an SEO optimized experience for somebody to find on Google, all the way to that sales rep trying to close a deal. And it's like, here are the final pieces that are going to get you over the finish line. But if all those assets are not, at minimum consolidated to one library, that whole concept becomes near impossible. So that's how marketers have to think about this. Like, this is just step one, getting all my content together. That's bare bones. That's table stakes now. How I leverage all my content once it's normalized, once it's basically in this warehouse. Then how can I expedite that buyer journey? How do I see a return on all that content that I've been producing over the years? I intend on continuing to produce. Can I show value? Well, I can show value when I can show that for every stage of that journey, these assets are the ones that win along these different particular stages for these different industries or different accounts and so forth.
Cool. Does anybody ever sorry, I said last question and then you made me think of something else. Does anybody ever say, well, they probably don't, but what's the advantage of a content experience platform over a native search application that can integrate into all your content and feedback the results in that way? Like,
Something that'll just surface up the link to wherever it lives somewhere else on the web.
yeah.
Yeah, because at that point, one, I mean, remember the word is experience, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately we want a cohesive experience because these aren't one dead end destinations. If all we
Yeah.
care about ever is serving up a single piece of content, somebody who looks for something, serving up that piece of content, and we're done, like, okay, go home, then that's fine. But that's not what we want to do, right? We want people to binge on content. We want to take those 11 pieces of assets that I think Gartner and Forrester told us that a buyer will have to go through
Yeah.
before they make a buying decision. Well, you don't want that to be 11 different touch points. You want to do that in one shot or, in three. So you need to create these bingeable experiences. And the way a lot of our, competitors have gone about this is they'll just iframe a bunch of disjointed experiences together so you can still have a next button.
Right.
But, as buyers, we're smarter than that. And I think we want a more cohesive experience than that. That would be like, watching an episode of our favorite show in one format and then it's a different format in the next episode. That's not a good experience. So that's ultimately what, and one of the benefits you get when everything is in one warehouse, it all looks and feels the same too, which creates a much better user experience. But equally importantly for the marketer, you get a much more concise and deliberate analytics that can go deep on exactly how that viewer traversed, where everything is apples to apples. You want to know how long they watched the video for, how deep they scrolled into the page. These are all the types of things that are only really possible when the vendor is actually in control of the page, rather than there being like 5 different vendors for all the different contents, and you have another piece of tech that's just kind of iframing them all together.
Yeah, definitely affects the experience greatly. I saw a webinar by Mark Bornstein, I think his name was, from On24, and he was showing examples of the content experience where you kind of created the way you would do it with Uberflip or another content experience platform that's similar, and it just made so much sense. It was just exactly the way I think we should be thinking about it, instead of the one-off landing pages and the nurture emails that do nothing for us. But
Right on.
anyway, that's great. Thank you very much, Yoav. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.